Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. My dear students, I hope you all are well at home. So, dear students, today I was supposed to take a class on right form of verbs part 2. In part 1, I told you that on right form of verbs, we have some problems, and I told you 3 ways to overcome the problems, how we can overcome. So, among these 3 techniques, today I am going to discuss with you with the number 1, finite and non-finite verb. That means, what is the techniques in the right form of verbs in a context, how I can indicate, how I can identify a blanks, whether the blanks is fixed for finite verb or a non-finite verb. Today, just I will tell you some important points on finite and non-finite verb. That's how we can find out, how we can apply in a context. So, dear students, I hope you all are going with your study very well with the Rangpur Online School. So, again I would like to welcome you all to Rangpur Online Schools. I am Muhammad Abdul Muttalib, Senior Teacher, Police Lines School and College, Rangpur. I am with you today. And so, dear students, I have written some sentences here. Just my target is to give you some specific information about finite and non-finite verb. Which informations will be needed, will be necessary, will be helpful, will be beneficial at the time of fill in the blanks in the right form of verbs, I told you. And after giving you some techniques, and I will show you how these techniques will be helpful in the right form of verbs. So, dear students, among only the 3 techniques, what are the techniques? I told you in my last class, we have to take 3 techniques. Number 1, I must have to know the use and techniques and how I can use and identify, indicate and finite and non-finite verb, and I have to understand the use of active and passive form of a verb, how we can use it in a sentence, how I can find out in a context whether the verb is in active form or in the passive form. And you have to know the subject verb agreement very completely. So, our today's target, my today's topic is the finite and non-finite verb. Our target, how I can identify, how I can indicate, how I can apply an finite verb and non-finite verb in a context. So, dear students, just I am going to give you a very important, very interesting, very easy clues, very easy techniques to separate the finite and non-finite verb in a context or in a sentence or in any context or any passage. If you can understand these techniques, then you can find out, you can identify finite and non-finite verb from any places. You can easily understand. So, dear students, just I have written 4 sentences here. Just let us look at the sentence. I have written, I eat rice to go to school. So, dear student, it's a sentence you know, no doubt. But in this sentence, we have 2 verbs. This is eat and this is to go. So, this to go, so this verb has a subject. I eat rice. That means the verb can take a subject here. But you cannot write I to go. It is not possible to write for you. That means I to go. It is not possible for us to write down. So, I cannot write down it is I to go. Meaning, this verb cannot take the subject. This is a technique. So, dear students, so number 1 point, this is this verb has a subject, but this has not a subject. But these 2 verbs, which verb is finite and which is non-finite, how I can find out it, how I can identify it. This is the question and this is the techniques. So we have generally what we study in our books, that when a verb can complete the sense of a sentence completely, it is called finite verb. And the verbs which cannot complete the sense of a sentence, it is called non-finite verb. Generally we read it in the books, but it makes a problem for us when we will go to passage or in a sentence or in any context. Then we cannot understand whether it, because this sentence, I eat rice to go to school. So this sentence has completed a sense very completely. It is a complete sense sentence. But what happens? There are two verbs here. One is finite and another is non-finite. So my question is, dear students, how I will identify, how I can indicate, how I can identify and finite and non-finite verb in a passage or in a sentence very easily. This is my target. So this is how easy it is. So dear students, just look at a technique here. This is a verb, it has a subject, you know, and again in the same sentence we have here another verb here. This is another verb, to go. So this is eat and this is to go. Now I will tell you and very interesting points. So how much interesting it is, you can understand now very easily. So now the same sentence here, just I have changed the number of the sentence. You know, just I have changed the number only. This is first person and this is third person. So I have changed the person and its number also. So this is first person and this is third person. So I have changed the persons of the subject. As I have changed the persons of the subjects, so now this verb has been changed. So this is the main point, this is the main technique, dear students. You must have to understand it, and then you can find out any finite and non-finite verb in a passage very easily. So I have changed the persons of the subject and the verb has been changed. Now I am going, he eats rice to go. Now the interesting matter, but here this verb has not been changed, it is unchanged. But in a same sentence, just I have changed the persons of the subjects. So this verb has been changed, but this verb has not been changed. This is unchanged. Again, go ahead please. So I am eating. At this time, I have changed the tense of this verb only. So I have changed the tense of the subject here of this sentence, but now the verb has been changed and it has become am eating. So the verb, when I have changed the tense, the verb has been changed. Now if you go here, to go, but this verb is still is unchanged. It has not been changed with the changing of the senses of the verb here or the subject here. So dear student, again number 4 point, rice is eaten by me to go to school. Here again rice is eaten, so I have changed the voice here. So it was this sentence here, it was in active form, but here it is in passive form. When I have changed the form of the verb in active to passive, then the verb has been changed here, but still here the verb is unchanged. So how much interesting it is. This only one technique. So dear student, this only one technique will be enough for anybody, for any students, to find out finite and non-finite verb in a sentence or in a passage, and we can use them very successfully also. So dear students, be careful. I am telling you that some techniques only. I am not teaching you the finite and non-finite verb in details. Just I am trying to give you the information only which is necessary in the right form of verbs only. When I will fill in the blanks in the right form of verbs, which techniques will be needed, this is my topics here. I will not teach you here finite and non-finite verb in details, because you know they have the details discussion in the grammar books. But from here, just we will take this point first, and we will go to the right form of verbs, whether we can use these techniques there or not. So dear students, so how I will find out a finite and non-finite verb, I have already shown you the one point. If the verbs change its persons, tense and voice, that means the subject, number, tense and voice. If any verb becomes changed with the changing of these four criteria, number one, subject, number, tense and voice. Just if I change these four criteria of a verb, if the verb is changed, then I can understand, oh yes, it is a finite verb. Again, if I change these four criteria of a verb in a sentence, but the verb is unchanged, the verb has no change, then I can understand, oh yes, this is a non-finite verb. So if I give you an example again, in short, then you can understand very easily. Suppose now I have write a sentence, he goes. So this is a very small sentence. So according to the definition what we have learned in the book generally, that is the verb which makes a complete sense of a sentence is called finite verb, and which cannot complete the sense of a sentence completely is called non-finite verb. What happens? Someone has asked you, please, he goes here, what is the goes, whether the verb goes is finite or non-finite. How I can answer it technically? So if I have the techniques, then I can answer it very easily. Why? Because I know if the person of the subject or number of the subject has been changed, the verb becomes changed. That is finite verb. And which is unchanged, which cannot be changed, is called non-finite verb. Now, just in your mind, if you change the subject, then you will get the verb go. Meaning, the subject has been changed, the verb has been changed. Then I can understand it very easily. Oh yes, I have understood this is an finite verb. This cannot be non-finite, because finite verb is dependent, is modified, is 100% dependent on four things. We must have to remember it, dear student. You must have to take the points. And a finite verb is dependent on four criteria, four things. Number one, it depends on its subject, its number, its tense and its voice. So again, in another sentence, if someone asks you, I do the work to get some money. Okay, dear student, so this is a sentence, this is a complete sentence. Now someone has asked you, please find out the finite and non-finite verb from this sentence. Then you can find out easily, very easily, just one technique you change. Yes, just I have changed the subject, or I may change tense or voice. So if I write he, then if you go, there will be does the work. He does the work to get some money. Now just look at, I have changed the number of the persons of the subject. Then it was do, here it is does. Meaning this verb is fully dependent on the subject's number, tense and voice. That is the main clue. But this verb is here, there it was to get, here it is to get, because this verb is not run by the subject, run by the tense or the voice or number or person. So they are independent verb. So finite means which can be changed, and non-finite means which cannot be changed. So this is always unchanged. So dear students, now I am going to give you another very short point to remember, to understand or to recall finite and non-finite verb. So just if we have a technique, just I am going to, this is S N T V. So dear students, just if you remember these 4 techniques only, you know NTV, there is a TV channel in Bangladesh, NTV, just your TV channel will be SNTV. Just you can remember it in your head very easily. So SNTV, suppose this is your TV channel. So SNTV means this is the symbol of finite verbs. So dear students, I should tell one thing, though I am teaching you the right form of verbs, but my lecture is not suitable for the students of class 6 and 7 or 8. So dear students, my target just to help only the students of class 9 and 10. So I have designed my lecture like this. So this lecture will not be suitable for the student of class 6 and class 7, because they perhaps they cannot understand in this way. They should be taught in another way. So dear students, my target is to help only the SSC examination, the students of class 9 and 10. So dear student, so I have given you this symbol SNTV. So what is the symbol? If I can use these 4 criteria or any verb, then I can understand easily this is finite verb. And if this test fails to on any verb, then I can understand this is a non-finite verb. Here S for subject, N for number, T for tense, and V for voice. Okay, how interesting it is, dear students. So if any verb has a subject, you can without any hesitation can tell this is a finite verb. If the verb has number, that means if I change the number of the subject, if I change the persons of the subject, then the verb becomes changed. This is finite verb. If I change the tense of the verb becomes changed. This is finite verb. And if I change the voice of the verb, active form to passive form, then the verb becomes changed. This is not unchangeable verb. It depends on these 4 criteria. That means if I change the subject, the verb will be changed. If I change the number, the verb will be changed. If I change the tense, the verb will be changed. And if I change the voice, then the verb will be changed. This if I test a verb with these 4 criteria, I told you this is your TV channel SNTV, then you can understand very easily. I will show you the proof that how we can understand what is finite and non-finite verb. So dear students, electricity has gone. I am using the focusing light of my phone. Please, if you have any hardship to look at, please don't mind. So dear students, now these 4 symbols are for the finite verb. This is for finite verb. And what are the symbols of non-finite verb? You know, non-finite verbs have only 3 criteria. This is non-finite verb. Number 1, this is gerund. The non-finite verb can be used as gerund and participle and infinitive. T. So dear students, so in the case of finite verb, I have got only 4 points, S, N, T, V. So this is TV channel. And at the case of non-finite verb, just your techniques, your points is only 3. G, P, I. You know GP mean grammar phone, then you can add a I. So this is GP, I. So what is the gerund? You can write down going or by going, participle you can write down going, infinitive to go. So dear students, what is the techniques? What is if you use any non-finite verb in a sentence, is form only this type of form, meaning only totally 2 form of a non-finite verb together. This is to go and this is going. Here you can see going, here also going, here is a preposition. But the main form of non-finite verb only 2, whether it takes to before it or it takes ing after it. So how much important, how much interesting it is, dear students. So I have to remember just 2 points. If I can identify, if I can understand in the blanks, I have to use a non-finite verb, then I can understand, oh yes, here the verb I will use, it must take to before it or ing after it. So what will happen? Then the fill in the blanks will be very easy for us. It will not be difficult for us. So dear student, totally from here I am going to tell you 2 things. Number 1, the finite verb. Finite verb, how I can identify finite? The technique is only for SN, TV. S for subject, N for number, T for tense, B for voice. Meaning, if any verbs is determined by these 4 things, is called finite verb. That means, if any verbs is sensed, is dependent on these 4 things, subject, number, tense and voice, they will be finite. And the verbs which will not be determined, which will not be run, which will not be sensed, which will not be dependent on these 4 criteria, on these 4 things, subject, number, tense and voice, they will be called the non-finite verbs. That's my technique from here, dear students, to remember, to memorize all the right form of verbs. Okay, you have understood 40 or 50 rules. No, just I will remember only 7 rules of right form of verbs, but I can fill in the blanks in the right form of verbs very successfully. From here, just 4 rules: subject, number, tense and voice. And here just you will remember 3 things, whether it will be gerund or participle or infinitive. So dear students, how I will use these techniques in the right form of verbs when I will fill in the blanks in the examination hall, now I will show you in reality. Then you can understand how much easy it is. I told you in my first class, right form of verb is not difficult one. It is very easy, but we must have to earn some techniques, and formula, so that the fill in the blanks becomes very easy for us. So dear students, now please try to remember, I told you, I gave you just 2 techniques. The finite verb is dependent only on 4 things: subject, number, tense and voice. It is, in short, we can remember it, SNTV. And the non-finite verb have 3 techniques. One is gerund, participle and infinitive. So now, how I can use these techniques, this my knowledge in the right form of verbs, in the context, in the passage, now I will show you. Please look at. So dear students, I told you this is a context of right form of verbs. Now how I can use, how I can identify in which gaps the verbs will be finite and in which gap the verbs will be non-finite. So my techniques, what I told you, it will tell me, it will help me to identify whether the verb will be finite and non-finite. So how interesting it is that just go through the passage, please. Many students. So dear students, so students, this is a subject, and I know the symbol of finite verb, number one subject, then we have number, tense and voice. So we have subject, then I am sure and I have understood that in this gap the verb should be finite verb. Now what are the symbol, what are the criteria of finite verb? Only 4. So you have got one subject, so you have choose a verb from the box. So neglect we have choose. So from here neglect. Now dear students, just when you have got the verbs, neglect, don't be harsh, because we know the symbol of finite verb are 4. So after when I have got the subject, so I have select a verb, but after selecting this verb, you must have to try to use the another 3 points, number, tense and voice. I told you. So many students, this is a plural number, so I cannot use s or es. So I have proved one rules, number, then it was tense. So again you have to consider, tense, what tense I will use here. Okay, then I will read the sentence again. Many students neglect their studies from the beginning of the year. Dear student, now I can understand this is a habitual fact. So as a habitual fact, then the tense will be in present indefinite tense. So then I can again I am neglect. Okay, it's okay. Again no. Again I have to use whether my sentence is in active form or passive form. Then you will sure. Then you will think that your answer is right. So I have to think. Oh yes. Is it in active or passive? So students, this is in active form, though I have not still told you about active and passive form. In my next class I will tell you about the techniques of active and passive form. So this is active form. Then I have understood that yes, here neglect is the right one. So dear student, go ahead. How interesting it is if you can understand my techniques. When the examination, so when the examination, so this is subject, so then again I have understood here the verb will be a finite verb. So if I have understood the finite verb, then I have to test 3 examination. I told you SNTB. Repeatedly you have to understand SNTB. So this is if I choose a verb from the box, approach. Then number 2 it was N, mean number. So examination is third person singular number. Then I have to use S or yes. Okay. Then I have to use sense. Again when the examination approaches, this is again universal or habitual fact. Then it is present indefinite tense and it is in the active form. So the answer is right. Now, so now dear students, now look at it very carefully. They start dash very seriously. So dear students, now before the gap there is a start is a verb. You know this is not a subject of this sentence. So it is very easy. As the gap has no subject here before the gap. So now I have understood that I must have to use a non-finite verb here. So non-finite verb has only 2 forms. I told you before few minutes that whether it will either it will take a to before it or ing after it. So which verb I will select from the box here, I must have to use before to or ing after it. So only 2 things. This is how will be interesting in the exam hall for me. Then I can understand, oh yes, which verb I have choose. I must have to use a to before it or ing after it. So there the answer is reading. So how much interesting it is, my dear students. So just try to take my points. HNTV, when I got the subject here, then I can understand here I must have to use a finite verb, and if I use a finite verb, I have to test on the another three rules. This is number one, number, tense and voice. I will choose a verb from the box, and then I will use the rules on that verb, the three, number, tense and voice. When I will get a gaps like this, before the gaps there is no subject here, then I can understand in this gap I must have to use a non-finite verb. And when I can understand a non-finite verb I have to use here, then I can understand, oh yes, before this verb I must have to use a to or ing after it. So like this. So dear students, they start very seriously. Sometimes it has a subject, so I have to use a finite verb here from the notes, from the phrase. Most of the time they get their notes. Now dear students, here before this gap there is no subject directly, so I have understood here a non-finite verb should be used by their private tutors. This gap, before the gap there is a subject, so here the verb should be finite. This notes without, so before this gap there is no subject, so there the verb will be non-finite verb. Then thus the answer, understanding, meaning as it is non-finite, so it has ing with it. As a result, their power of, so before the gap there is no subject, so I can understand here the verb will be non-finite. So thinking does not develop. If they find any new question in the examination, they can't. So here is a tense. So dear students, you know SNTV, so there is a tense, so the verb should be finite. As a result, many students can do well in the examination if they had read seriously before, seriously from the very beginning of the year. It has a subject, so the verb should be in finite form. So dear students, so just take the techniques. If you can understand in the gaps that if you can understand that the verb should be finite, then just you will use the three rules, number, tense and voice. But if you can understand the verb should be in non-finite form, then it is very easy for you. It will be very easy, very interesting for you. Oh yes, after choosing a verb from the box, just you use a to before it or ing after it. So gerund and participle, though in some of the cases if you use to before a verb or ing after it, both the answer will be right. But dear students, every time it will not be right, because sometimes you must have to differentiate between gerund and participle. That's another matter. But the technique is, I have understood that as the verb is in a non-finite form, I must have to use a to before it and ing after it. But whether it be gerund or participle, then we have to understand in the another matter. So dear students, my today's target was to give you the number one technique. The number one technique is the how I can identify finite and non-finite verb in a context, and how I can use my brain very easily to remember the rules. So I have to remember only 7 rules when I will go through the passages or in any context. So dear students, thank you very much. If you have understood the techniques, then my labor will be in full. So dear students, I am in fear, I am afraid of that before the Eid vacation, whether I can take any more classes or not. If I cannot, then my next classes will be held after your Eid celebration. So I would like to say you all advance Eid greetings, Eid Mubarak. So everyone will stay home. You will enjoy your Eid celebration at home, I hope. And may Allah bless you all. May Allah forgive us from the COVID-19 pandemic, and may Allah bless us all. So until then, thank you very much.